When investigators raided a storage unit in Phoenix, Arizona in 2017, they expected to find stolen merchandise. What they discovered instead turned a routine theft investigation into one of the most disturbing serial killer cases in the Southwest. Inside temperature-controlled unit number 247 were 17 carefully preserved items, 17 locks of hair, 17 women, 17 lives cataloged like specimens in a museum. Each one had a story. Each one had disappeared without a trace. And each one had crossed paths with a man who collected more than just memories. On June 14, 1998, 19-year-old Amanda Chen left her apartment in Flagstaff, Arizona at approximately 6:30 in the evening. She told her roommate she was going to meet someone about a job opportunity. She was carrying a small purse and wearing a red jacket that her roommate would later describe to police in perfect detail. Amanda never came home that night. She never came home at all. Amanda had moved to Flagstaff 6 months earlier from San Diego. She was trying to start fresh after dropping out of community college. She worked part-time at a coffee shop near the university campus, serving students and tourists who passed through the mountain town. Her co-workers described her as quiet and friendly, though she kept mostly to herself. She had no family in Arizona. Her mother lived in California, and they spoke maybe once a month. Her father had passed away when she was 12. She had a younger brother, but they weren't close. Amanda was the kind of person who could disappear, and it might take weeks before anyone really noticed she was gone. The job opportunity she mentioned to her roommate came from a classified ad in the local newspaper. This was 1998, before Craigslist, before widespread internet job postings. People still looked for work in the printed classifieds section. The ad said a local photography studio was looking for a receptionist and assistant. No experience necessary. Good pay. Call this number to schedule an interview. Amanda called the number and spoke with a man who identified himself as Mr. Garrett. He said he ran a small portrait studio and needed help with scheduling, phone calls, and light office work. He suggested they meet at a coffee shop downtown to discuss the position. Amanda agreed. She wrote down the time and place on a notepad by her phone. 7 p.m. at the Desert Rose Cafe on Route 66. Her roommate, a nursing student named Kelly, saw the note the next morning when Amanda didn't return. She thought perhaps Amanda had stayed with a friend or had gotten the job and started right away. It wasn't until 3 days later, when Amanda missed her shift at the coffee shop and her manager called the apartment, that Kelly began to worry. Kelly went to the police on June 17th. She brought the note with the meeting information. She described Amanda's red jacket, her small black purse, the fact that she had taken her bus pass but not her car keys. The officer who took the report was sympathetic, but not particularly concerned. A 19-year-old woman going to a job interview and not coming home wasn't automatically suspicious. Maybe she got the job and left town. Maybe she met someone. Maybe she just decided to move on. But Kelly insisted something was wrong. Amanda wouldn't just leave without telling anyone. She wouldn't miss work without calling. The officer agreed to look into it. He called the Desert Rose Cafe and asked if they remembered seeing a young Asian woman in a red jacket 3 nights ago around 7 p.m. The manager said maybe. They got a lot of customers. Nothing stood out. The officer tried to trace the phone number from the classified ad. It was a local number, but when he called it, he got a disconnected message. He checked with the phone company. The number had been a temporary prepaid line, activated 2 weeks before Amanda's disappearance and canceled the day after. There was no name attached to the account. It had been purchased with cash at a convenience store. The investigation stalled almost immediately. Without witnesses, without a body, without any clear evidence of foul play, there was little the police could do. Amanda's mother drove up from California and filed a missing persons report. She put up flyers around Flagstaff. She contacted local news stations. But as weeks turned into months, the story faded from public attention. Amanda Chen became another name in the missing persons database, another unsolved case, another young woman who vanished into thin air. Amanda wasn't the only one. Between 1998 and 2014, at least 16 other women disappeared under similar circumstances across Arizona, New Mexico, and Nevada. They were all young, between 18 and 28 years old. They were all transient, new to their cities, without strong family connections, and they all had responded to job opportunities or help-wanted ads before they vanished. But here's the thing about missing persons cases. Unless there's evidence of a crime, Unless there's a body or a witness or some clear indication of foul play, they don't get connected. They're just individual disappearances in different jurisdictions, different years, different circumstances. No one was looking at the pattern because no one knew there was a pattern to look for. In 1999, 23-year-old Monica Herrera disappeared from Albuquerque after telling her boyfriend she was meeting someone about a photography modeling opportunity. In 2001, 20-year-old Sarah Jennings vanished from Las Vegas after responding to an ad for an art studio assistant. In 2003, 19-year-old Kayla Brooks went missing from Tucson following a phone call about a receptionist position. Kelly went to the police on June 17th. She brought the note with the meeting information. She described Amanda's red jacket, her small black purse, the fact that she had taken her bus pass but not her car keys. The officer who took the report was sympathetic but not particularly concerned. A 19-year-old woman going to a job interview and not coming home wasn't automatically suspicious. Maybe she got the job and left town. Maybe she met someone. Maybe she just decided to move on. But Kelly insisted something was wrong. Amanda wouldn't just leave without telling anyone. She wouldn't miss work without calling. The officer agreed to look into it. He called the Desert Rose Cafe and asked if they remembered seeing a young Asian woman in a red jacket 3 nights ago around 7 p.m. The manager said maybe. They got a lot of customers. Nothing stood out. The officer tried to trace the phone number from the classified ad. It was a local number, but when he called it, he got a disconnected message. He checked with the phone company. The number had been a temporary prepaid line, activated 2 weeks before Amanda's disappearance, and canceled the day after. There was no name attached to the account. It had been purchased with cash at a convenience store. The investigation stalled almost immediately. Without witnesses, without a body, without any clear evidence of foul play, there was little the police could do. Amanda's mother drove up from California and filed a missing persons report. She put up flyers around Flagstaff. She contacted local news stations. But as weeks turned into months, the story faded from public attention. Amanda Chen became another name in the missing persons database, another unsolved case, another young woman who vanished into thin air. Amanda wasn't the only one. Between 1998 and 2014, at least 16 other women disappeared under similar circumstances across Arizona, New Mexico, and Nevada. They were all young, between 18 and 28 years old. They were all transient, new to their cities, without strong family connections, and they all had responded to job opportunities or help-wanted ads before they vanished. But here's the thing about missing persons cases. Unless there's evidence of a crime, unless there's a body or a witness or some clear indication of foul play, they don't get connected. They're just individual disappearances in different jurisdictions, different years, different circumstances. No one was looking at the pattern because no one knew there was a pattern to look for. In 1999, 23-year-old Monica Herrera disappeared from Albuquerque after telling her boyfriend she was meeting someone about a photography modeling opportunity. In 2001, 20-year-old Sarah Jennings vanished from Las Vegas after responding to an ad for an art studio assistant. In 2003, 19-year-old Kayla Brooks went missing from Tucson following a phone call about a receptionist position. The phone number he provided was always a disposable prepaid number, purchased with cash, used once, and discarded. When women called, he would answer as Mr. Garrett, or Mr. Stevens, or Mr. Chen, or whatever name he'd chosen for that particular hunt. He kept his voice professional and friendly. He asked basic questions about their experience and availability. He suggested meeting in person to discuss the position further. The meeting place was always public at first. A coffee shop, a restaurant, a bookstore. Somewhere the woman would feel safe. Vincent would arrive early, observe from a distance, and make sure she came alone. If she brought a friend or seemed nervous, he would sometimes abort the plan. He was patient. He could wait for the right opportunity. When they met, Vincent was charming. He dressed well, carried a portfolio of his photography work, spoke knowledgeably about art and business. He seemed legitimate. He would buy the woman coffee, discuss the job opportunity, ask about her background and goals. He was building trust, making her comfortable. Then he would suggest visiting the actual studio or workspace. He'd say it was just a few miles away, and he could show her where she'd be working. Or he'd suggest looking at his equipment and explaining what her duties would involve. Most women agreed. After a pleasant conversation over coffee, it seemed like a reasonable next step. But there was no studio. Not where he said there was, anyway. Vincent would drive the woman out of town, explaining that his workspace was in a quieter area, away from the expensive downtown rents. He'd talk the whole way, keeping conversation flowing, keeping her distracted from how far they were driving or how isolated the area was becoming. By the time the woman realized something was wrong, it was too late. They were on a desert road with no other cars around. Vincent's demeanor would change. The friendly photographer would disappear, and the woman would understand, in those final terrifying moments, that she had made a fatal mistake. Vincent killed them in different ways. Sometimes he strangled them. Sometimes he used a weapon he kept in his car. The method varied, but the outcome was always the same. He was careful not to leave evidence in his vehicle. He brought plastic sheeting. He wore gloves. He had learned from his first kill how to minimize forensic traces. After the murder, Vincent would take a specific trophy from each victim. He would cut a lock of their hair, always from the same spot, just behind the left ear. He would place this in a small plastic bag labeled with the woman's name, the date of her death, and a brief description. Amanda, June 14, 1998, red jacket, afraid at the end but quiet. He kept these trophies in a storage unit he rented under a false name. Not at his apartment where police might one day look. Not at his studio where customers might stumble upon them. A storage unit in a large facility where hundreds of units sat side by side and no one paid attention to what anyone else kept in theirs. The bodies he disposed of in various locations across the Arizona desert. Remote areas where hikers rarely went. Areas he had scouted in advance. He would bury them shallowly or sometimes not at all, letting the desert and its scavengers do the work of concealment. The desert is vast. Bodies can disappear completely out there. From 1998 to 2014, Vincent Garrett killed 17 women. That's about one per year, though the intervals varied. Sometimes 2 in 1 year, sometimes a gap of 18 months. He never rushed. He waited until the urge became too strong to ignore, until he found the right victim, until conditions were perfect. Between murders, Vincent lived a seemingly ordinary life. He ran his photography studio. He paid his bills. He had casual friendships with a few other small business owners in his building. He dated occasionally, though relationships never lasted long. Women found him distant, emotionally unavailable. They would break up with him and move on, never suspecting that the quiet photographer was hiding something monstrous. His studio survived the transition from film to digital photography. He adapted with the times, buying new equipment, learning new software. He even had a small website by the mid-2000s. Nothing fancy, just a page showing his services and contact information. He got enough business to keep the studio open, though it never thrived. Every few months, Vincent would visit his storage unit. He would unlock the climate-controlled space, turn on the light, and spend time with his collection. The 17 plastic bags were arranged on shelves he'd installed himself, each one carefully labeled, each one containing a lock of hair and his handwritten notes about that particular victim. He would take them down one by one, reading his notes, remembering the face, the voice, the moment of realization in their eyes. He told investigators later that these visits gave him a sense of calm, a feeling that he had preserved something important, that these women, who had been forgotten by almost everyone else in the world, were remembered by him. But Vincent made a mistake, one that would eventually unravel everything. In 2015, his photography studio fell on hard times. Digital photography had made professional portraits less necessary. People took pictures on their phones. The few customers who still wanted professional photos often went to chain stores that could offer cheaper prices. Vincent's income dropped. He fell behind on rent. In early 2016, he was evicted from his studio space. He moved his equipment to his apartment, thinking he could work from home. But then his apartment building was sold to new owners who raised the rent dramatically. Vincent couldn't afford the increase. In August 2016, he was evicted from his apartment too. He became transient, staying with acquaintances for a few weeks at a time, then moving on. He sold most of his photography equipment to pay for food and gas, but he kept paying for the storage unit. Every month, no matter how broke he was, he made sure that payment went through. The storage unit was all he had left, his collection, his memories. In March 2017, Vincent's financial situation became desperate. He hadn't paid the storage unit fee in 2 months. The facility sent him warnings. If he didn't pay within 30 days, they would auction off the contents of his unit according to Arizona law. Vincent didn't have the money. He thought about breaking into the facility at night and removing his collection, but the security was too tight. Cameras everywhere. A guard on duty. He felt the walls closing in. On April 3, 2017, in a moment of desperation and poor judgment, Vincent broke into a sporting goods store in Phoenix. He thought he could steal equipment to sell, raise the money he needed, but the alarm system was better than he expected. The police arrived within minutes. Vincent was caught climbing back out through the broken window. He was arrested on burglary charges. During booking, his fingerprints were taken and run through the criminal database. He had no prior criminal record. He was released on bail the next day, scheduled to appear in court in 2 weeks. But that arrest set something in motion that Vincent couldn't stop. The storage facility where Vincent rented Unit 247 had a policy. After 90 days of non-payment, units were auctioned. Vincent's unit hit that 90-day mark in May 2017. The facility manager posted notice of an auction, as required by law. Storage unit auctions are common. People buy the contents sight unseen, hoping to find valuable items they can resell. Sometimes they find treasures. Sometimes they find junk. Sometimes they find things that should never have been hidden away in the first place. On May 20th, 2017, a man named Derek Paulson won the auction for Unit 247. He paid $350 for the contents. When he opened the unit, he found it was mostly empty. Some shelves, some plastic storage containers, a few cardboard boxes. He started sorting through the items, looking for anything worth reselling. In one of the plastic containers, he found the bags. 17 small plastic bags arranged neatly on a shelf, each one labeled with a name and a date, each one containing what appeared to be human hair. Derek thought at first it might be a collection from a hair salon or something similar. But when he read the labels more carefully, when he saw the notes written in neat handwriting, he felt his stomach turn. Amanda, June 14th, 1998, red jacket, afraid at the end but quiet. He called the police. Officers arrived at the storage facility within 20 minutes. They secured the unit as a crime scene. Detectives carefully photographed and documented everything. They collected the 17 bags as evidence. Each one was treated as a potential piece of a homicide investigation. The names on the bags were run through missing persons databases. Within hours, the investigators realized what they had found. 12 of the 17 names matched women who had been reported missing over the past 2 decades. Women from different cities across the Southwest. Women whose cases had never been solved. The police traced the rental agreement for Storage Unit 247. It was under a false name, but the payment history provided a trail. Credit card records showed the payments had come from a bank account belonging to Vincent Garrett, the same Vincent Garrett, who had been arrested for burglary 6 weeks earlier. Detectives pulled Vincent's file from the burglary arrest. They had his address, his photograph, his fingerprints. They ran his name through their systems and found his business registration for the photography studio. They found his old apartment addresses. They found his entire history in Arizona. On May 21, 2017, detectives obtained a search warrant for Vincent's current residence, a small room he was renting in a house in a rundown part of Phoenix. They also obtained a warrant for his arrest on suspicion of multiple homicides. At 6 a.m., a team of officers surrounded the house. They knocked on Vincent's door. He answered in his pajamas, clearly just woken up. When they told him he was under arrest for murder, he didn't resist. He didn't seem surprised. He looked almost relieved. In his room, investigators found a laptop computer containing thousands of photographs. Most were legitimate photography work, but buried in hidden folders were images that made the detectives' blood run cold. Locations in the desert, GPS coordinates, notes about disposal sites. Vincent had documented everything. Vincent Garrett was taken to police headquarters and placed in an interrogation room. He was read his Miranda rights. He was offered a lawyer. He declined. He said he wanted to talk. For the next 12 hours, Vincent told investigators everything. He confessed to all 17 murders. He provided names, dates, locations. He described his method in clinical detail. He showed no remorse. No emotion. He spoke about the killings the way someone might describe a hobby or a job. He explained that he had started in 1998 with Amanda Chen. He said he hadn't planned it initially. He had placed the classified ad intending to actually hire someone for his studio. But when Amanda showed up, something clicked in his mind. He realized how easy it would be, how vulnerable she was, how no one would really miss her if she disappeared. He described driving her out to the desert, how she had become nervous as they got further from town, how she had asked him to turn around. He described the moment he pulled the car over, the look in her eyes when she realized what was happening. He described killing her and feeling for the first time in his life a sense of complete control and satisfaction. After that, it became a pattern he couldn't break. Every few months, the urge would build. He would plan his next hunt. He would place the ad, make the calls, set up the meeting. He would find a young woman who fit his criteria: alone, transient, vulnerable. And he would add her to his collection. Vincent told investigators the locations of burial sites. Some were in Arizona. Some were across the border in New Mexico. Some were in Nevada. He had a map on his computer with pins marking each location. He had been meticulous in his record keeping. Search teams were dispatched to these locations. Over the following weeks, they found remains at 13 of the 17 sites. Some bodies were little more than bones. Some had been scattered by animals. But dental records and DNA analysis confirmed the identities: Amanda Chen, Monica Herrera, Sarah Jennings, Kayla Brooks. Names that had been in missing persons databases for years were finally matched with remains. 4 sites yielded nothing. Either Vincent had misremembered the locations, or the desert had completely reclaimed the bodies. Those 4 women would remain identified only by the locks of hair in Vincent's collection and his detailed confessions. Vincent Garrett was charged with 17 counts of first-degree murder. The trial began in January 2018. The prosecution presented overwhelming evidence: the storage unit collection, the confession, the computer files, the recovered remains, the DNA matches. The defense argued that Vincent was mentally ill, that his collecting compulsion was evidence of psychosis, but psychiatric evaluations showed he was legally sane. He understood right from wrong. He had planned his crimes carefully. He had taken steps to avoid detection. He was not insane in the eyes of the law. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. Vincent Garrett was found guilty on all 17 counts. The judge sentenced him to 17 consecutive life sentences without possibility of parole. He was transferred to a maximum security prison where he remains today. The families of the victims had mixed reactions. Some felt relief at finally having answers. Some felt anger that it took so long to catch him. Amanda Chen's mother said she was grateful to finally be able to bury her daughter properly, nearly 20 years after her disappearance. The storage unit facility implemented new policies requiring identity verification for rentals. The Phoenix Police Department created a task force to review other cold cases involving missing transient women, looking for potential patterns they might have missed. Vincent's photography studio space remained empty for 2 years before finally being rented by a bakery. The owners knew the history but needed affordable retail space. As for Vincent himself, he gave one final interview to investigators before being transferred to prison. They asked him why he kept the trophies, why he labeled them so carefully, why he risked everything to keep that storage unit. He said it was because everyone else had forgotten these women. They had no families searching for them, no friends keeping their memories alive. They had disappeared, and the world moved on, as if they'd never existed. "I wanted to remember them," Vincent said. "I wanted someone to know they had lived, even if that someone was me, even if the way I remembered them was terrible." The detective who conducted that interview said it was the most disturbing answer he'd ever heard. Not because it was violent or angry, but because, in Vincent's twisted logic, he believed he had somehow honored his victims by murdering them and keeping pieces of them in plastic bags in a storage unit. 17 women, 17 lives cut short, 17 families who finally got answers, though the answers brought no real peace. Only the cold comfort of knowing what happened. Only the terrible knowledge that their daughters, sisters, and friends had died alone in the desert. Victims of a man who convinced himself he was preserving their memory while erasing their futures.